of symptoms. Again, they didn't give them Prozac. They didn't give them anything like that. They gave them fish oil. Okay, and although they saw an uptick in some of the inflammation markers, they came down quicker. Most importantly, the behavioral questionnaire, they were like, oh, I don't feel social anxiety. I don't feel anhedonia. I don't feel like I want to stay by myself in a dark room. Like they answered all those questions differently solely because they gave them 2 grams of EPA a day. Again, fish oil, pretty easy supplement. I would say look for things that are well sourced. Like for instance, I like this one. I think you can get any ones that are like that sustainability, where's this, my little projector thing work? That little check mark means it's well sourced, it's not farmed fish oil, it's wild source fish oil. Okay? It improves we know like all our nerve cells are made from fats, white matter, oral myelination is made from fats. If you continually provide intake healthy fats, you can build white matter cell membranes better so that you keep these structures from breaking down over time. Okay? Again, vitamin D. Okay, when I saw it, we were in Rio and we saw this. I said, this guy's, he was there for like 2 hours just sleeping. I would have got burned in about 20 minutes. But again, he can take on sunlight a little bit better than me. But we know vitamin D, also low levels of vitamin D are associated directly with depression and anxiety. Okay, we know light therapy is an effective treatment for people who do have anxiety and depression. When they put people in a light room multiple times over the course of a week, their outcomes and depression measures are different.
Mm-hmm. And they said in Utah, even in the summer, like we can't get enough vitamin D.
Yeah.
And so like basically everyone, and she was actually from Iowa, which was a little higher up, but she was like, I always think of vitamin D because I know like even in the summertime, I'm not getting enough just where I am on the equator.
Yeah, and majority, if you're in a northern, like I'm in Boston, like I supplemented. I try to get outside, and for me, like that means if I can get my clients to take the kettlebells in behind the gym, and she knows, right? I'd go back there. If we can get out there and just do that, like 1 or 2 days a week, it's a game changer, right? So just get people out there and get them in the sun, but then supplementing is probably a pretty good idea. Okay, how do we deal with stress? How many people have stress in their life? So I figured, right? And we know, this is fascinating. You guys familiar with Robert Sapolsky, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, written Behave, some of these books, very, very smart researcher from Stanford. And what they did, they took 2 groups of baboons, right? And they put like a placebo implant in one, and then they put a glucosteroid in the other, which is essentially causes inflammation, deals with inflammation. It's a steroidal, right? It deals with it. Okay, when they put glucocorticoid, which is the same type of stress response you get when you're like, oh, I'm late for work, or I have to make this presentation for tomorrow, or I'm in traffic, my flight was delayed, right? The same type of daily stress people deal with, the big glucocorticoid jump. They saw a shrinking of the hippocampus in those baboons that they put it in their head. Right? And over time, it degraded the hippocampus of those baboons that they put that glucocorticoid into their skull, whereas the other group had nothing. So it wasn't just the surgical intervention that caused the stress. Okay, so we know stress will actually shrink your brain or impair your ability to make decisions. And again, you guys know this stuff, like just when you think about your life. When you're stressed out, can you do anything as well as normal? You can't think straight. Like that's why when you're stressed and you're in traffic, then you get in a car accident, right? Or like when you're stressed, you freak out on like your spouse or something because they're like, there's too much going on. You can't manage what's going on in between the ears when you're dealing with stress. Okay, now some research on meditation. Okay, I used to be the type of person to think like, okay, if I'm gonna do meditation, I have to sit cross-legged in the corner and chant. I gotta smoke a bunch of weed and like burn some peyote. It doesn't have to be that way. Now, if you like to do it that way, that's great. Yeah. Hey, I'm not saying that's wrong. No. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I think when you say meditation, the stigma in like the public domain is like, oh, like I'm gonna grow my hair, like chant and have a beer. Like, doesn't have to be like that, okay? But what meditation teaches you is mindfulness, right? Because you can choose how you react to stressors. If you choose how you react to stressors, the hormonal profile is different when someone is able to take something and absorb it than if they don't. Okay, so 3 months of yoga and meditation, okay? Improved depression, anxiety scores, improved mindfulness scores, 3-fold increase in BDNF plasma levels, so brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor, which is essentially a protein that codes to build brain cells and build myelin, right? And then significant increase in cortisol awakening response. So when you wake up, right, and then you immediately feel like, oh, I'm energized, like I wake up. Before you have your coffee, that's your cortisol awakening response. Cortisol isn't always bad. Cortisol, when it's at the right time, is actually helpful. It makes you awake. If your cortisol is always up, then you have all these other issues that we talk about. Right? When people are depressed and people tend to or have dementia and they tend to wake up and they don't want to get out of bed in the morning, right? And part of that is when they look at their blood flow profile, their cortisol awakening response is dampened, right? Well, when they did yoga and meditation, they saw people had a higher cortisol awakening response and a more regular one, meaning day after day it was more consistent. So they didn't have some days where like, oh, I'm so groggy, right? But it's because they manage stress differently. When they looked at your stress profile, your adrenal cortex, all that was more regulated when people can take a breath, being mindful, focus on breathing. Because that's essentially what you're getting out of that 20 minutes of meditation or hour yoga class, right? It's a moment of mindfulness and focused breathing work, right? So whether that means you do like some of the PRI interventions or original strength breathing interventions, or you're just doing a yoga class, or you're doing some mindfulness meditation, probably not a bad idea to help you manage that stress profile, okay? And there's a lot of apps to teach. There's an app for that, okay? There's apps to teach you how to do that. I don't think you need to go to some shaman in the desert, okay? And they're free, okay? I started with Headspace. It's a very popular one. It's free, 10 minutes a day. You get through your 10 sessions there. There's a million different options. The Calm app, Relax Meditation app is the one I like the most because you can choose like, these are all free. Like the hertz and brainwaves you want, the music you want. 10% Happier is another one. I encourage my clients, especially when they come in and use the Normatech, like in our therapy clinic, put on the headphones, do that. Rather than sitting on their phone answering emails and getting more stressed out, I make them put their phone in a bucket. Yep.
There's another one, Brainwave 35 binaural programs.
See?
Brainwave 35 binaural programs.
Again, people's attention is here, so if you can get them on like, hey, okay, there's an app for that, maybe that'll help. But I'm like, hey, I don't want you answering text. Put your phone over there, put it on the Bluetooth headphones, sit there with the Normatech pants on when you come in for rehab work and work through that. And we find people have lower pain scores. We know when people deal with stress better, that they tend to have lower reported pain scores because pain is a central mechanism, not like a local one, right? So again, that goes a whole nother topic.
I have all of these, but there's another one called Insight Timer, and it has like a bajillion different like meditations. So
You like that one? Is that one you like the best?
Yeah, it's not as like Headspace is really guided where it like teaches you how to meditate, and Insight Timer has like categories like meditation for eating, meditation for sleep, meditation for like body scans, so it's not as easy to always find exactly what you want, but you can do like anywhere from like 3 minutes to 60 minutes. So
Nice.
There's a lot of different options.
That's awesome. Yeah, so like and I think you're only going to see more in this. Like the guy in Headspace was on the Tonight Show, so like it's not like it's becoming a more of a mainstream thing, which is easier to talk about with clients who might not realize the connection that you guys might realize, right? Time and nature, and I talked about this in my past presentation. I think that's the big thing we're missing. If you read the book Go Wild, this was last week in Colorado. If you read the book Go Wild, he touches on this a lot. It's funny, they talk about forest bathing. They took this group of Japanese businessmen, people who had never been who don't spend time in nature. If you know anything about the Japanese business culture, stress, 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 stress. They have the highest suicide rate in the world. Okay? They took them, they threw them in nature, 2 nature walks for a total of 2 hours over the course of the week. Then they measured immune system activity. So they measured natural killer cells before and after, which is the coolest sounding immune cell that there is, because it's called a natural killer cell. But those are the things that like deal with DNA replication issues, help fight cancer, infection, all of those things. And after the time in nature, they measured natural killer cell, huge jump in natural killer cell production, solely from 2 nature walks. Okay? They also saw lower chronic cortisol levels, which matters, lower epinephrine and norepinephrine levels. Right? And then when they did the wellness questionnaire, right, the significantly increased score for vigor, decreased score for anxiety, depression, and anger. Again, these are things we kind of know like empirically just because we live our life. But these are things you have to promote to your clients too. Because I'm like, my job isn't done when you leave here. It's not just talking about nutrition outside of here. It's like, hey, I want to pick one thing you're going to do outside this week. Okay, so Nancy, for instance, is in a swimming club with her friends. It's an inclusive, social connectedness environment for her. Stu goes in a walking club around around Boston. Me and Jim, the guy Jim, he lives near the Fells, which is a reserve area right down the street from our gym. We go for a hike once a week, right? And I don't think you need to go with them, but I think you need to show them that like if you're coming to me for health and wellness, it's a bigger picture thing than hey, let's do some deadlifts and swings, which are great. I'm not saying it's not valuable, but I think there's more to that. Okay. And I was extremely happy there. So it wasn't a mistake. Okay? And then social connectedness too, like being in environments where people are going to connect you and lift you up, whether that means you're with your dog on the top of a mountain or you're in a walking group, like I said, Stu, or swimming, being around people and that's why I think training in groups is good. Like once I have personal training clients, I'm like, hey, I want to transition you in a group training setting because it creates social connectedness, and then doing things in that group to promote that, like group texting, having people doing events where they're going to spend time together. All those things matter. Because again, you don't know what's going on underneath the skin with most people. There could be a lot of people dealing with like depressive related diseases that you don't realize, and social connectedness can help that. Also with dementia and Alzheimer's, they found when they put people into groups, things like a chess group or things like the one study was they did like a waltz dancing group. Okay, and the dancing probably co-founded that, but I think having people in a connected environment makes a very big difference when it comes to brain health. Okay. So again, the question is, how do you solve this? There isn't a single answer, but I think starting on our point to address all of these qualities and think, okay, let's all think of something we can do better. I know I can on that whole list, right? To try to provide a better situation for my clients, I think it makes a very big difference. Okay, so again, all I ask is that people start to think about the big picture outside of functional training, outside of corrective exercise, outside of the stuff that we hammer and we're really good at and we love, the stuff that we taught when we came to CFSC. To think about, okay, what's the big picture, how I can impact someone's life? And then Brett and Brendan talked about that yesterday. It's bigger than just the technical stuff. Like Brett says, that the way you coach squats is not going to change much over the course of your career. But the way you communicate and the way you make someone feel when they come in here will change. So these are just some of the sources. I'm going to send all my slides and sources to you guys, and then you can distribute them out to everyone. And that'll be a long list. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. You can email me. I'm happy to answer any of your questions, okay? Thank you.
I just wanted to point out for you guys, like on the supplements and everything with nutrition, for your clients, like you don't really necessarily want to recommend them those supplements just because it's going to be better for them over the whole to just be eating better, and it would be most effective for them to get their blood work done, and if they're deficient, then they could use the supplements because it's best to get those nutrients from food. So if they can get it from the food first, that's going to be the best, and then supplement from there. So I'll point that out.
So one other thing I wanted to solidify this even more